Welcome to my humble little office. My name is R. Keith Andrews. I am a spiritual guide and paranormal adept. And I have to sneeze without warning on occasion. I bill myself as a spiritual guide because the tools I offer are the exact same tools I personally use in my day-to-day life, and the philosophies of life I talk about are the same philosophies I guide virtually every decision I make by. With this in mind, I know these tools will work for you because they continue to work for me and have literally worked for thousands of other people over the years with varying degrees of success, depending on their own personal efforts. Now, one of the things, before we get into things, I do want to tip my hat to Storm. He is our primary moderator and hides in the background, making sure tech works properly. Okay, he is also the one that keeps problem children out of the room. And if you do find yourself outside the room, odds are you didn't read the rules at the top of the chat room or the ones scrolling across the screen at the bottom of it. Okay, that said, if you find yourself outside the room, not able to communicate in the chat room, you undoubtedly did something you shouldn't have. But the following day, you'll be able to get back in. Unless you continue doing so, and then you can bet your bottom dollar. As per my request, Storm will make certain that you can't get back in, period. Okay, this is a safe zone for everybody. Now, we also have LA Moon in the chat room. She is my primary moderator that is inside the chat room, helping to keep conversations going properly. And, very important from my standpoint, she is also the one that keeps a very close eye on my own health. Which, by the way, I'm figuring I've had enough dying on the go. I'm thinking it may not be that enjoyable to watch. It's fine watching it on movies. It's another watching it in real life. Now, before we get into it, we are going to be talking about the Reticulan Homeworld today. What you may know as the Greys. And LA, thank you for the blessing, as it were. LA put in the chat room here. She goes, "God bless you," right after my sneeze. Renee, how are things going on your end? Well, there we are. How are things going on your end? I know things are usually busy, so I'm really happy to see you here. Definitely appreciate you putting the time in to actually spend time with us. I desire. I think that's right. Yep, that was. Just had to blow up my screen a little so I could see it a little better. Now, one of the important factors here, let's take a look at the Reticulan Homeworld. Now, you guys know the Reticulans and probably know them as Greys. So let's eliminate a couple of things. One, Greys are not cloning themselves. They are not, you're not dealing with a bunch of robots and non-existent people. We are talking about an actual race. Now, I will tell you, if you take a look at them, the Greys and the Reticulans are, from human standpoint, they are a reptilian. Okay, they are essentially, well, I was going to say they're cold-blooded. They're actually not, but they do lay eggs. Okay, Bob, you are in now. First of all, I should have done this. Renee is in with the gold. Bob Thorson, you are in with the silver. How you doing? Now, one of the neat little things about this whole setup, okay, when you look at the Reticulan Homeworld, okay, these guys are very technologically advanced. Their Homeworld, on the other hand, is a whole different ballgame. Okay, it is as violent as they come, and it's on the Homeworld. Now, understand they have temperatures very similar to Earth, but much higher in oxygen level and much damper. Okay, it's kind of like living in a temperate zone rainforest on Earth, where you got a lot of water, a lot of big plants. Okay, and virtually everything out there. Okay, now this is where the reticulans managed to get things running right. Mike Jones, you are in with the bronze. How's it going, Mike? Let's mark that. There we go. Yeah, I'm glad you could join us, Mike. Now, the reticulans, what they did was early on, and we are talking literally billions of years ago. And of course, I always get this question, well, if they're that many years, if they're that old a species, why haven't they progressed? Well, there comes a point where societies figure out, and mankind hasn't pieced this one together yet. Okay, there comes a point where a society, where a species figures out that technological advancement is not necessarily the be all and end all. So they developed a way, because the reticulans are not exactly a robust race, they developed technology that could compensate. And you got to realize some of the critters that are on this planet, well, all of them virtually will try and kill you one way or the other. Most of them will succeed. But we are not just talking about what you would recognize as animals, as fauna, as fauna. We are also talking on the Reticulan homeworld, the flora. Picture, if you will. Now, I'm going to mention some of the plants on Earth and let you know these are just mild renditions. Okay. And if you don't understand, I don't have pictures for you guys. Sorry, you're going to have to look them up. Okay. All I got is names. So you get to look them up, if it really matters that much to you. But on Reticulan Prime, if you will, when you go there, number one, let's start with the easy ones. We have neat little things like chokeweed. On Earth, we call chokeweed because of the fact that it tends to take out the plants nearby. Chokeweed, their equivalent of chokeweed, does not take out the plants nearby. It takes out the living entities. It takes out your predators, your herbivores, takes them all out. Okay. And what it does is, number one, it will literally choke the life out of you. Okay. But it strangles so tightly as to break the skin. Okay. Once it's broken the skin, it will send shoots into the body and start draining the lifeblood out of it without crushing the poor thing to death. The reason for this is it feeds on the live fluids. Okay. And just to make matters worse, or make matters better, depending on who you are, after it has drained the life completely, it will drop its seeds into the remaining body. Okay. Where the seeds will literally feed off the desiccating body. Now, this is only one plant. This is just a type of grass. Eternity Eternal, you are in with honorable mention. How you doing? Glad you could join us. Now, the neat part about it, just to put this in perspective, because of the fact that I question my own sanity all the time. Okay, I keep looking at this going, is this my imagination gone wild? Okay, and I question that. So this is why I say I don't expect you to necessarily believe me. That's your option. Okay. Woo, how you doing? Glad you could join us. Here. And what do we got? Jeff, how you doing? Glad you could join us. And came over from Spaced Out Radio. Oh, well, welcome aboard there. Really appreciate it. And yes, as a matter of fact, you brought that up. Next Friday is the first Friday of December. And I don't even know what date that is. But I do have a calendar here so I can find out easy enough. Let us see here. I love trying to sort things out this way. Next Friday is the 5th of December. I will be back on Spaced Out then. Now, again, guys, just so you're aware, just to remind you, if you have a question, absolutely put it in the chat room. But please put it in all caps so I can find the thing, and I will do my best to answer it. The reality is that I don't know if you're going to like the answer, but it will be an honest one. Now, when we take a look at their equivalent of chokeweed, it literally reproduces by dropping its seeds into the body. Okay. Now, the neat thing with chokeweed is it does not have male and female, different genders. These are species. This is a species that reproduces by itself by dropping fertilized eggs into the body cavity. Okay. Needless to say, this eliminates the problem that the reticulans have of bearing somebody. Okay. Now that's only one plant. Okay. And that is essentially a grass. Okay. Now, then we have the other neat little ones. Like when you take a look at strangleweed, which really is a vine. Okay. But instead of growing across the ground, it hangs from cliff sides. It hangs from trees. It'll climb a tree, okay, and hang down and grab anything coming by it. So yeah, the animals that hide in the trees are not necessarily in the safest place available. Reticulans, what they did was they built their bunkers where they do not unlike on Earth. It's recommended, and I strongly recommend this, on Earth, get plants into your house. They are the best air filtration system available. One of the reason for that is it's a great air filtration system. The problem is, on Reticulan Prime, we have an interesting problem. Okay, you bring a plant in, the odds are you're bringing a predator into your house. Not necessarily a great idea. Okay, then we have, now that's your grass, and this is only a couple of the species. Now I don't know how many species of plants there are on Earth, but I do know there's only a handful that are actually carnivorous. Elaine, thank you for the reminder. Happy Thanksgiving to everybody in the States that celebrates it. And for that matter, to everybody in the States that doesn't celebrate it. The reality is, where it comes to Thanksgiving, honestly, it should be, in my opinion, something we do on a day-to-day basis. The nice little part, and just to add to what Ellie has just said about cross chatter, absolutely, we do keep an eye on it. Okay, that said, if I see a conversation going on, I'm likely to step in on it and say something. Oh, there you go. I haven't had steak personally in probably 15 years. But it's always nice to have a meal with your other half. So what are they doing? Bringing them back there? We'll just go. My kids went with my mom to the Bahamas, with my mom and sister to the Bahamas. So next year's Thanksgiving is they bring them back. But that's just one species of grass and one species of vines. Now, you have neat little things like what amounts to, and I don't know what the actual species names are right offhand. Okay, still working on that. But there is a neat little type of rush, not a fern, but I think it would be called a grass that grows near the rivers on Reticulan Prime. And I simply call it whipweed. This thing is like a living threshing machine. Okay. And unlike on Earth, where you have to have the grass, you have to have a good wind for the grass to swing. With whipweed, you don't have to. It will simply, a cluster of it will simply lash out and hit whatever is available. To this end, okay, to this end, when the herbivores on Reticulan Prime, 90% of them are armored to avoid things like being crushed by the vegetation, being slashed open wide. Okay, this does not mean that they are absolutely protected. Oh, nice, Bob. Yeah. But see, my brother, before they became a thing, for Thanksgiving, he used to take a chicken, push it inside a duck, push that, like he got the whole 9 yards. Well, Bynum got it. Stick a chicken inside a duck, stick the whole thing inside a turkey, and he literally called it a turducken. In today's world, this is just commonplace. Okay, but that's just a useful piece of information. Yeah, LA is going, that sounds like some of the cactus here. Absolutely. Now, the neat little thing with the cactus with what would amount to the desert flora on Reticulan Prime, okay, is take a look at, what are they called? I forget what the name of the cactus is on Earth. Really big. They've got really big leaves. Okay. Not the big barrel cactus, but I'm talking about the ones with huge padded leaves. Okay. Unlike the cacti on Earth, these things do not own what we got. Oh, there we go. LA is going, that's the prickly pear. Sorry, Storm is going, that's the prickly pear. It does, LA, but it also is really good. Unfortunately, you had to pick through a lot of the bone. But with the cactus that look like that, all they did, and this is how they get there, this is how they reproduced. They will they'll bring back their leaf, if you will, and whip it, much like a porcupine on Earth does. Okay. Now, porcupines on Earth whip it to smack into something. These things will fire it a good 30 feet. But in doing so, they literally this is their reproductive method. They punch a hole in it. Okay, they fire these quills into these spikes into a living animal. Okay, and turn around, and then now the already germinated seed is punched into the flesh and blood of the animal. Net result, as it grows, the animal will obviously, for some weird reason, die. Okay, and this new little critter this new little plant evolves, it grows from that point. Yeah, neat part was when you look at, like Bob's just saying, he's seen the turducken sold in Walmart. And the reality of it is, my brother made those before they were actually sold, and before they were actually sold en masse. Some of my family has developed some interesting things ahead of time. Now, as you can see, okay, when we're looking at herbivores, they're armored because they don't, on the whole, move quickly. Okay, then we get to, now, We've gotten into the desert fauna, the desert fauna of flora. Now let's move to the waterline, like move into the ocean, where it is well known, at least on Earth, we know that what amounts to algae is what produces oxygen for this planet. Well, see, the neat thing is on Earth, the water is kind of a bluish color. On Reticulan prime, okay, the water is a greenish yellow. But that's because, well, greenish yellow, sometimes orange. But that's because, yes, their flora also produces, it also produces oxygen, or more to the point, refines oxygen. But here's the kicker. On the surface of the water, you get what amounts to algae. But instead of you being able to push it out of the way, like on Earth, you take algae, you can push it out of the way, and you don't have a problem. You might get a little building on your ship. Okay, this stuff, you put your hand in it, and it will grab hold of you, and it immediately starts to dissolve you. Now, how is this safe, and how can you get flora and fauna underwater? Well, that's the easy part. The fish don't surface. Okay, and even the aerial, if you will, the avians do not land where there is this algae. They go out where the water is rough. Okay, because the algae can't combine itself. And one little thing isn't going to create a problem. It's when you get a sleeve covered that creates the problem. Okay. Now, the other neat little part about this is we start taking a look at the surface. You've got the oxygen transfer. No question there. Flora works essentially the same way. But the more of the protein it gets into it, i.e., the more its hunting pays off, the faster it produces the oxygen transfer. Because as the body decays and is consumed, it is where the fresh oxygen is released back into the air. Okay, net result, we're not talking about about desert fauna, or desert flora rather, that has a leaf that is like a foot across. We are talking about desert flora that has a leaf that is sometimes as much as 3 to 4 feet across per leaf. And of course, then we deal with your herbivores that are big enough to eat it. You can bet your bottom dollar. We are not talking about an animal that is just armored on the outside. We are talking about animals that have armor inside their mouth. This is so they can crush the spikes without getting hurt. Okay, it is a volatile world, and it's not one I recommend you going out and walking around in. We've got some pretty on Earth. We've got some pretty dangerous parts of the world. Okay, where it comes to the wilderness, they are nothing compared to what's on Reticulan Prime. And before somebody asks, I have no idea where Reticulan Prime is. But let's be clear. Number one, I do not have any training in astrophysics or in astronomy. Okay. I also don't know where north, south, east, or west are on this planet. Never mind where the park is in relation to the house I live in. And it's the house I've lived in for 10 years. So the fact I don't know where something is, sorry, that ain't something I'm going to worry about. Now, when we take a look, the other thing that you look at, okay, there are all kinds of there's all kinds of flora and fauna. Okay, flora is just as deadly. Now, here's the neat little thing. On Earth, LA goes, Australia comes to mind, and New York City. Oh, yeah, I absolutely agree with you. Neat part with it, when you're dealing with the flora and fauna on Reticulan Prime, Okay, you're looking at a planet where everything is geared towards wiping you out. Okay, and yes, the reticulans themselves are no different. Okay, well, they're different in as much as they evolved and built the technology to protect themselves. These guys do not go outside without an exoskeleton. You know, the reality of it is they wear armored suits, and this is where part of the idea that humans came up with. Oh, these guys are androids. They're not androids. They have exoskeletons. Okay, and on Earth, it's neat because on Earth they can collect up all the samples they'd like, and they do comparative botany. Okay, they look at the different things, and they are working on getting some plants crossbred, okay, hybridized. So, because what they'll do is take, for instance, the prickly pear. Operation, welcome aboard. Glad you could join us. Operation is just asking, do they wear armored suits at all times? No, absolutely not. They only wear them when they are leaving the compounds. Okay, and the fact of the matter is, they've got various different cities, little communities, and yes, they've got little towns. All of them are all of these little areas are secured so that they don't have the option, and they don't have the fear of the flora getting in. But when they leave, okay, when they go outside for whatever reason, nobody leaves the house without an exoskeleton. Okay, and yes, there are different grades. The reality of it, though, is the Reticulan military figured, more to the point, the Reticulan government figured out that you don't give state of the art to the military first. You give state of the art equipment to the general population. Keep them alive. Your military, you train to avoid the problem and to cope with the problem. But the general population doesn't have that training. So instead of giving all the training and all of the exoskeleton, all the new developments in exoskeletons, instead of giving that all to the military, the newest pieces are released to the general public. Then they are modified, okay, for combat purposes. But the government, the Reticulan government, figured it out. Keep your population alive, and you've got a military. You don't keep the population alive, the military pretty much became pointless. Odd thing about it, though, okay, the odd thing about it is this: when you're dealing with a population, the government has figured out that you've got to take care of your people. On Earth, we seem to have a big problem because reconciling that one. Now, of course, we've talked about vines. We've talked about some of the little odds and ends. Here's the neat thing. Okay, some of the plants, some of the trees, especially. Okay, we've got coniferous trees, which are your ones that shed the leaves every year, and you've got evergreens that don't shed their leaves at all. Okay, well, we also have carnivorous trees on Reticulan prime. Okay, these things are, when we're talking about them being being similar to redwoods, it's only similar by name. Redwood trees on Reticula are literally a carnivorous tree. But what they do is they'll reach down and, sometimes they'll step on you, sometimes they'll drag you up into the branches. They drag you up into the branches. There is a neat little symbiotic relationship there. Okay, because the trees will grab something from the ground And depending on the size of the tree will determine what it's grabbing. Okay, it will grab something from the ground, haul it up into the upper branches, where the avians or where the aerial individuals actually get to feed without getting eaten. But the trade-off is as they feed, they drop bits and pieces onto the ground that can be absorbed. That can be actually consumed by the ground dwellers. Okay, as you can picture, when we're talking about rain on Reticulan Prime, more often than not, you're talking about blood rain, as in so much blood coming down that it literally has a neat little problem. Okay. The short answer there, Operation, is absolutely Reticulan Prime. Their entire empire is run under a one world government. But let us be clear. A one world government does not mean dictatorship. And thank you so much for that. Because it just dawned on me, something that I should mark down here. Don't know what day I'm going to do it on. But, as you know, I keep a list so I can get things organized. So I'm just putting this, the whole concept of a one world government, we are going to be covering down the road. I just don't know exactly when. Okay, so we will take a look at that down the road. But yeah, the Reticulan Empire does operate a one world government. It is not a dictatorship. Okay, now when you take a look at the symbiotic relationship between some of what amount to trees. Jeff, how you doing? The short answer, the reticulans absolutely can breathe on Earth. Okay, it's a very similar atmospheric concoction, or atmospheric soup, if you will. Theirs just happens to be much higher in oxygen, much like ours was some 300,000 years ago. Okay, theirs stayed that way though. Okay, but it stayed that way because of the interaction between the plants and the flora and fauna. Okay, the reticulans simply figured out how to work with it. But yeah, they absolutely, and they are a very fragile race, comparatively speaking. Okay, one of the neat little things about them coming here is the hybridization program. Now, the neat part about that is we've talked about the hybridization program as it pertains to humans and other worlders. Okay, but the hybridization program, centuries back, and we just haven't covered it, is also used for hybridizing plants, because what they're looking at is they're doing their best to improve their own life in the complexes. You can't have plants and purebred plants from Reticulan Prime inside a facility, because pretty soon you're not going to have anybody in the facility except the plants. Okay, and yes, that will go there. Okay, we might just as well go there. How do you deal with criminals on Reticulan Prime? Well, you feed the plants or the animals. There is none of this issue life sentence. Your life sentence is about 15 seconds. Okay, because you're tossed outside without a suit. Okay, now the nice part about it, on Reticulan 5, okay, I was trying to piece this together and get this. Now, you guys, especially if you're Star Trek fans, you guys will understand this reference. Okay, but the econ are literally a real critter. Some of the LA, the answer is yes. Some of the plants do consume each other. Okay. When we're talking, like, this is why you really have to be careful. Because there are some plants that will target plants instead of living organisms. This, in a weird sort of way, also shows you that some of the reticulans have allies amongst the flora. Okay, when you take a look, for instance, when you take a look at snapdragons, okay, snapdragons, what amount to snapdragons on Earth, whole different ball game on Reticulan prime. Okay, they will target the airborne seeds. Okay, and they do it in a very simple fashion. But this is why I say Reticula is not a great place to hang around for a picnic, unless you're planning on being the picnic. But now, get this. Okay, in book 2 of Races of the World, I cover the econ and the ecodal. These are resident denizens of Reticulan prime. But here's where, and if you know the original Star Trek, okay, you know of this neat little critter called a tribble, based on the econ. Okay, but here's why the econ why you gotta leave them on Reticulan 5. You do not take them off. These things will consume everything plant-like around them. Okay, as quickly as they can get away with. But they are a primary food source of plants, reticulans, and the flora, the fauna, and the reticulans, which, by the way, the reticulans are part of the fauna. Okay, now the econ are literally, they are a species that produces by the millions. Okay, in the hopes that a few of them survive. Okay, now the ecodal are a natural predator of the econ. Okay, mind you, a lot of things are. It's just they happen to be very quick. Now, of course, the neat little part, and this is why the ecodal can get away with it. These guys aren't very big. Okay, but they are very similar because the ecodal didn't originate on Reticulan 5 or Reticulan prime. The ecodal originated on, and I do not have a planetary name for you, but the Fuentiran, okay, are another species that are very similar to the ecodal, okay, and they ended up with some of the ecodal ended up landing on Reticulan prime, and net result, they thrived because all of a sudden they had a beautiful food system that couldn't get away. Okay, they just can't. The econ cannot travel quick. Okay, mind you, the econ burrow at a staggering level. And one of the neat things about this world, okay, like Earth is such a paradise in so many ways, and it's something that we can capitalize on as humans. Because I'll tell you, you go to Reticulan prime, everything's going to try and kill you. Pretty much. It is literally a kill or be killed planet. The Reticulans built their homes, they built their cities to be absolutely solid. So, and the moment they catch one spore or one plant inside a complex, not only is the plant removed, but they'll find out who brought it in. And yes, there are those brilliant reticulans that, like Earth, go, but these are a neat plant. I'm going to bring it in on the black market. Difference. On Earth, you enter the black market. Okay, you enter the black market on Earth, and you get caught you get imprisoned. Well, they don't have prisons on Reticulan 5. You bring a carnivorous plant inside a complex, you're now considered a terrorist and you're thrown out without a suit. Okay? And in all fairness, it's pretty quick. There are no lineups to get out on death door. There is just literally, there's the airlock, you're gone. Problem solved. Okay? But you will find that everything is built the same way from that end. Even when we get into the microscopic animals. Okay? Because understanding the Reticulan prime and Earth are very similar, aside from the extreme heightened level of oxygen, which means on Earth or on Reticulan prime, if you ever manage to get there, they will give you a rebreather, but it's not actually because you can't breathe the atmosphere. It's because you're likely to get high on the extreme level of oxygen. Okay, and yes, much like on Earth, 300,000 years ago or a couple of million years back. Okay, much as your dragonflies had a 4-foot wingspan and your mosquitoes were like a foot long. On Reticulan prime, they don't stab you to draw your blood. They impale you. Okay, and then they tear you apart. Now the neat part there is you take an individual, you take an animal of some form, a plant, a one of their, if you will, mosquitoes, lands on it, right, and impales the thing, while the if you will, mosquito is feeding, something else is likely to take the mosquito out. Okay, and this is just an ongoing thing. There is none of this issue of, nobody worries about the idea of you being too aggressive. Because if you're not aggressive, okay, you're in trouble. But there is, and when I get the book written, I'm writing one called Meet the Reticulans. There are, that I'm aware of, and I haven't pinned them all down yet, but there are roughly 15 races of reticulans. And Jeff, you are absolutely correct. Okay, because even the plants that go after other plants, there is such a high level of red protein in them that they are feeding on that as well. Okay, I mean, yes, the herbivores, they target plants, absolutely. But they target plants because of the fact that, well, it's a balance point. And there are still more carnivores on the planet, okay, than there are herbivores. The plants are just a mix. If you think a third of you've got a third of the carnivores as compared to the herbivores. When you look at the plants, about a third of them are meat eaters. Okay, or bloodsuckers. Okay, and sad to say, or possibly good to say, just because the bloodsuckers does not make them politicians or lawyers. Okay, the reality of it is that when you're on that planet, you have to realize you either accept you're part of the food chain, which humans have a heck of a problem accepting, or you end up part of the food chain. Okay, and rest assured, on Reticula, your belief structure and who you pray to, they do have their own religions and a lot of them. But they've all figured out it doesn't matter who you pray to. Essentially, an overgrown sunflower is not going to turn around and ask you whether or not you believe in a given God. Okay, and LA's just let us know we're down to the 15-minute mark. Now, you can bet your bottom dollar that I am making, like, everything I've talked about here is going into my writings. Okay, The reality of it is that I'm sitting on way too much information, and some of you are going to be sitting there looking at me going, your imagination is phenomenal, but that's all it is. And you're welcome to it. Okay, let's be clear though. I was using the term parapsychological phenomenon about 20 years before it became a common phrase. Okay. Now, Operation goes, have any humans been to the Reticulan Homeworld? The short answer is, to the best of my knowledge, yes. I am not the only one that gets out there. Okay, I really am not. I'm just the only one that I know of that will come out and say, here it is. Now do with it what you will. You know, the reality is, have they been there? In my opinion, yeah, they have. Have they been on the surface of the Reticulan homeworld without an exoskeleton? Not lived to tell about it. And by the way, that's the neat part about Reticula. Okay. They don't care what planet you come from. They don't care what species you are. You break their laws, they will treat you by their laws. And there is no such thing as, oh, we've got them in prison and now we're going to extradite you to another planet. You won't live that long. Okay. If you're lucky, they will send back word to where your planet was, and go, oh, he broke the law and this is his name. Do what you will. But that does not happen very often. We are looking at a world where a dandelion is deadly. Okay. Yes, there are still medicinal purposes to the roots of various plants. Okay. Unfortunately, getting to the roots can require a bit of a battle. Okay. But then these same people, these same people that are utilizing the herbalistic roots, are the same people that will use different body parts of various species in order to make their medicine. They don't worry about this idea of, oh, hey, here's a novel idea. Let's take this inedible stuff, put it as part of the medication. They will take stuff that actually works. Okay. They've got some really neat ideas, that tend to get a little carried away on occasion. Myself, I take a look at the way they interact with each other, and they literally are very connected to the world. Okay, and they are very connected to Reticulan Prime. Okay, the nice part about it is they make no qualms about it. They know, respect the planet, respect the plants, respect the animals, because these things will eat you if you don't. Okay, there is no, oh, you hurt my feeling, or you said something I didn't like the sound of it. Yeah, Bob goes, sounds like camping out there is out of the question. Absolutely not. You can camp out there. They have armored campsites. Okay, so yes, you can go and camp. And the thing they look at there is they take an armored tent, and I do mean armored. Quite seriously, you can drop the thing from orbit and land and be perfectly fine with it. Well, it'll be perfectly fine. But what they do is you go to camp out there, and they are quite often, they've got the normal ones that you pack in by foot, but you're in an exoskeleton. But when you get inside the camp, then you can take your exoskeleton off. Okay, because now you're inside a containment field. Okay, and some of their campers, like here, are mechanical. They are automated. Okay, so what you've got is they're not on wheels; they're on walkers, as in, because of the fact you're dealing with such an overgrowth in the way of underbrush, you're looking at a campsite that literally can carve its way through a small forest in order to get a clearing. Okay, They are big, the mobile campsite campers are built with operational pincers, with operational. They don't have. Well, they do. I was going to say they don't have flamethrowers. They do, but they don't use a flame of. They do not use flame that will light the property on fire. Again, humidity is rather on the high side. You can also, if you choose to, take one of these mobile campers and go underwater with it. Now, don't kid yourself. Underwater is not necessarily safe. Okay, because you got to remember, much as the fish won't come to the surface, this doesn't mean they won't go to the ground. So we're looking at a lot, and like you're looking at a whole different ballgame on wilderness. Okay, and yes, I do take a look at, like, while I'm working with my painting and what have you, which, by the way, I'll be getting back to pretty quick here. Okay, when you look at the flora here at the Homeworld, it is absolutely deadly. Okay, now the Reticulans have figured it out, so therefore they have a thriving world. Well, in all fairness, they've got thriving several worlds. They've got an interstellar empire. Okay, and that's because they figured out how to work together. That's because they figured out certain plants are just a bad idea. You just don't do that. Now, it is known on Earth that some plants you do not put together with other ones because they tend to choke each other out. Sad reality, on Reticula, this quite often is a literal conflict. Okay, and oddly enough, they do have underground fight rings that literally use plants, animals, and people, much like the old gladiatorial arena, the gladiator pits on Earth during the Roman Empire, and presumably during other empires. Okay, all in all, you're looking at a lot of interaction. Now, yes, this all sounds absolutely bizarre. We go out in the woods here. Your biggest problem on Earth tends to be, for most people, running into poison ivy, running into poison oak in the way of plants. If you run into a pitcher plant, there's no problem because a pitcher plant on Earth simply draws insects in and they drown. On Reticula, the equivalent thereof are plants big enough that will open up underneath a campsite. Okay, if you set up in the wrong place, one of these plants will open up underneath you and drop your whole campsite into their stomach. Now, you won't die right away, rest assured, but the acid in their stomach will dissolve those campers. Okay, again, it's a matter of knowing the terrain. Don't park on top of a carnivorous pitcher. It's a bad idea and is not going to end well. At least not for you. Now, yes, there are a lot of survival gadgets, if you will, that are attached to the campers. Because even between cities, you don't go in a standard vehicle. They literally have boom chutes between cities so that you can stay inside a containment field and still get from one world to another. Now, that said, when you take a look at the intercity boom chutes, okay, on the outside, they have scrubbers. And that's to stop plants from adhering to the outside of the boom chute. Because if the plants get a hold of the boom chute, all of a sudden you got a problem. Not only are they going to shatter the tube, they're going to get into your city. And this is not going to end well. The sad reality is carnivorous plants on Reticula will take a city out without a problem. Now, I've just been told we're at the 5-minute mark. Okay, with that in mind, thanks so much, Renee. Glad you dropped in. With that in mind, tomorrow we will be back to take a look at 8 p.m. Pacific. We're going to be looking at the Srazazian accommodations for off-world visitors. Ultimately, Bob, the answer is yes. Bob's just quickly asking, do they use them in gladiatorial arenas? Essentially, yes. Now, that said, we are at the end of the show. We will be back again tomorrow at 8 p.m. Pacific, to look at Srazazian accommodations to visitors. With that in mind, until we meet again, do take care of yourselves and each other, and for pity's sakes, stay positive.